Hi everyone, hope you are doing great. Let's begin our discussion today by talking about lists, Python lists. Okay, so what is a list? We have list in Java, list in C# and different programming languages. So a list is a collection data type that stores an ordered index collection of elements or items if you want. So I'll come again with that definition. So first of all, I mentioned a list is a collection data type, okay, that stores an ordered and indexed collection of items or elements. Okay, it's really confusing. All right, but the simplest form is it's a collection data type, okay, that can store more than one element. So let's just put it that simple. All right, so we remember variables when we discussed variables here, right? So we mentioned that variables are containers that store data, right? So there is a difference between a list and a variable, okay? So list, let's just go through some of the differences between list and variables. And while we go through them, we'll practicalize how they work, right? So a list is an ordered collection of items, whereas a variable um, has storage location for only a single value. Okay, so for instance, this is a variable. Let me make this bigger. So we have a variable x is assigned the value of, okay, let me use first name is assigned the value of Simpson. Okay, so this is a variable. You can't like have Simpson and things like that. So this will cause error. So let's try that. So let me just try and print this. Okay, Simpson, this is what it's giving back to us. Okay, so a list, okay, is a collection of items, whereas these variables have a location for just a single value, right? So had it been, we removed this and we printed it like this, it would have just printed without the brackets, right? And that looks good. So this is a variable, okay? But when we say a list, we are talking about a collection of items. Say you want to collect students in class, names of students in class. Let me just change this print statement to that. Okay, so I can as well comment that. So with a list, you can collect several, okay, several names, another name. This is not the correct in syntax, but another name, you know. I'm just trying to show you how this will work. So you can collect these three names inside this collection, and um, all of them belong to this names list. Okay, so that's the first point you should know, that a list contains a collection of items, whereas a variable contains just a storage for one single value, right? So the second point you should know as a difference between list and variables, it's really worthwhile that we are comparing this so you know which one to choose when you're working. So a list, okay, a list can contain duplicate values. A list can contain duplicate values, whereas an array holds one value at a time. Okay, so that's just what we also practiced here. All right, so a list can contain duplicate values. So say I'm having a list of, let me just give you the correct syntax for list. So say I'm having a list of fruits. Without bias, I'll just bring up my favorite fruits. So, so mango. Yep. Okay. So with a list, you can actually have banana twice. Okay. There's no issue with that. So it can contain duplicate values. Okay, so you have banana 2 times. Let me push this down. So you can actually have banana or mango or any of these values 2 times with a list, okay? So it can contain duplicate values, okay? All right, another thing is that um, a list is indexed, okay? So this first element here has an index of 0. So if we are to call this fruits, okay, this first element, if you want to print out banana, then we'll definitely start with this is 0 index, this is 1, banana again is 2, and this is 3, right? So we have 0, 1, 2, 3. So it starts at index 0, okay? All right. So a list has is indexed, whereas a variable is not indexed. That's another point you should know. Another thing you should know is that a list is mutable. Okay, that's it can be modified. I can come over here and change the value of that list. Okay, I can change, I can add more things on that list, more elements, or update a particular element of that list, or remove one or two elements from that list, okay, or insert at a particular position, okay. So a list is mutable. That means it can be modified. So a list is also called a mutable data type, okay. Once we get into the data type videos or tutorial, we'll be able to talk more on that, okay. All right, so a variable is either mutable or immutable. It can be changed or cannot be changed. Another thing to know about lists is that it can store various data types. In fact, that's the one I like the most about lists, okay? So we can come in here and store a number, okay? We can come in here and store a Boolean. We can come in there and store a Boolean, right? We can come in there and store a Boolean, and they all mix up anywhere. You can store 5.67, which is was a float, okay? So it can mix up. You can still print, let me print this one, which is index 0, 1, 2. So let's print 2, and I'm adding this print. And here we go, 5.67, right? So it doesn't matter the data type. So that's one powerful feature that Python has, that the list in Python can have different data types, okay? Different, remember our data types when we talked about data types, um, integers, floats, Boolean, and the rest of them, okay? So that's a basic introduction to lists. That's a basic introduction to lists, and we try to compare it with variables for you to understand. All right, so somebody might ask, what are the application use cases of lists? Where can you apply lists? Lists can be applied in your personal life. If you've had to-do lists, to-do apps, to-do list apps where you set goals. Once you accomplish them, you check them. So that actually uses a list data type in programming. Sorry about that. So in programming, okay. So you can also use it to create a music playlist. Okay, music playlist for maybe your apps, your music on your phones. Okay, you can use it to create a recipe. That's an ingredients list, recipe for food, and all those things, okay? So that's for personal life. In education, you can easily use this, the knowledge you gain from creating lists, to be able to create course syllabus like this. You create better course syllabuses, and you just place your elements where they need to be. So in technology, you can use lists to create bookmarks, like normal bookmarks, on your browser and things like that. Okay, so in finance, you can use list to create expense tracker, finance doctor, whatever name you can call it. So you get your expense tracked. Okay, so these are typical use cases um, for lists where you can practically use them for your personal purpose or for industry. Okay, so let's get started with some I love lists. Okay, so let's just get started with it. You know, this was a bit more advanced. We can't start like that. Okay, so that we, physics has strength in simplifying very complex and difficult stuff to make them very, very easy to understand. Okay, so all right, so let's get started with lists. To create a list or to create a list, what you need to do is you if you want to create a list, the first thing you do is you create the name of the list. Okay, name of the list. So let's just say I want to create countries. So that's the name of my list. And we assign the value of that name to what? Okay, so we can assign the value of that name. Let's start with an empty list. That looks better. So we'll just start with an empty list. So this is an empty list. Okay, this is a list. So the list at this point is very empty. All right, so what you need to do is either you add items here. Meanwhile, Python has different ways of creating lists, but I'll just use the square brackets for simplicity in this tutorial. So please, yeah. All right, but you can check out different ways, list, then bracket, yeah, so but I may not delve into that here. So say we want to add items here, so we can add Bulgaria here. Okay, and we can have Libya. Okay, we can add Czechia. All right, we can add China. Okay, the US and the rest. So we can create a list this way where we add things at once. Okay, all right, so but there is another way of creating lists. There is another way of creating lists. So instead of creating a list like this, we can create an empty list as it is now and begin to add values. Add value 1, add another one. Okay, so but we'll explore these two ways of creating lists. All right, let's explore these two ways of creating lists. All right, so the first thing we'll progress with is the indexing of lists. We already talked about indexing. So the first element is index 0, the second is index 1, and then it counts upwards like that. So let's take our countries back. So we have Botswana. Of course, I can go back to this Control Z. All right, so we have this list of beautiful countries. And how do you print this list? Okay, it is not really straightforward, so to say, to print lists directly, except when we get to this topic, for loop, okay? But for you to see the elements of a list, there's an easier way of doing that for us to see the elements of a list. All right, so to see the elements of a list, get index list item. All right, so how do we achieve this to get index of a list item? So say we want to get this Zekia that I like so much. So that is index 0, 1, 2, right? So all you need to do, open square brackets and type 2 inside. Then what's the name of this not variables list? The list name is country. So you copy it and just place it just before here. So that's it. So it will fetch Zekia for us. But if we run it now, it's not going to print anything because we have not told it to print. So if you try this, it will not print, but there's no error at all. So you need to wrap it around a print statement in order to print it. So we have Zekia. So what if we wanted to print China? So we just change this to 3 and it will print China. Okay, so that's how you get index of a list. Okay, index of list items. All right. So one other thing we can do here is to get the length of a list. All right. So to get the length of a list, there is a function called len. Okay, and we just put it here, right? So let's try to print that as well. So it shows us that this is 4. So the length of countries is not counting index this time, it's counting the actual elements 1, 2, 3, 4. Say we remove these 2. So if we print that again, it will be smart enough to tell us to be smart enough to tell us it's 2, right? All right, so let's talk about the error we just had. So I removed these 2, and then I was asking for the third index. So there was no third index. That's why I had that error. Okay, so you have to make sure that you request for an index that is within this list. Okay, all right. So this is how you get the length of a list. Okay, that's a count of the items in a list. All right, so this is very, very easy to do, right? So, all right, so another thing that I'll quickly talk about now is to all right, let me give you a quick classwork. Just you can pause the video and do it for, you should have just 30 seconds to 1 minute to do it, and you come back, check the answer, and continue with us. All right, so how would you print Bulgaria? How would you print Bulgaria on this console? All right, so you can pause the video, try to check it out, and if you have the answers, come back. All right, welcome back. All right, so to print Bulgaria, we change that index to 0, and it will print Bulgaria for us. Okay, that's very easy classwork to do. All right, so let me push this downward and comment them. Okay, I want to use that comment and comment them out and push them downward so nothing prints. All right. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, so we have this. I talked about empty list. Let me just reduce this to maybe 1. So we have just 1 list. This is still fine. We can still print this, and we have countries. With 0, it will still print Bulgaria for us, right? So, but good enough. So I want to show you how to add uh, elements to the end of the list. How to add elements to the end of the list. Okay. So how do you achieve that? There is a Python function called append. 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 So what append does, let me spell it out. So what append does is that it adds a new element at the end of the list. When we are talking about end of the list, we are talking about the right-hand side here. So to add it after Bulgaria here this way, not this way, not this way, but this way. So this is the beginning of the list, and this is the end of the list. So an append function, let me say that again, is a function in Python that adds an element or an item to the end of the list. That's the right-hand side of a list. Okay, so if we want to add Nigeria there, okay, so all we need to do is copy countries dot app. Oh, my bad. Oh, maybe I didn't copy that. Copy countries dot append, and all you need to do is add the new element you want to add, Nigeria. Okay, so we append Nigeria there, right? So, but nothing will print. So we've appended Nigeria to the end of the list. But how are you sure that Nigeria has been added? So the list now looks like this. Let me show you what the list looks like. Let me comment that and show you. The list now looks like this. Okay, so let's add one more. So let's add Sweden. And one more country. I loved that country so much as a child. Denmark. All right, so then Denmark has been added. So now this list looks like this. This list, in essence, looks like this. Let me reduce this, and we have my beautiful Denmark here. Okay, so Bulgaria, Nigeria, Sweden, and Denmark. So it looks like that: Bulgaria, Nigeria, Sweden, and Denmark. So how are we sure? We need a way of trying to check if we are correct or not. All right, so to do that, let's print. Let me try to print Sweden. Sweden is 0, 1, 2. Sweden is 2. So what I'll do is countries and Sweden, which is 2. So let's see. So it prints Sweden for me. Okay, so although it has not religiously put it this way or explicitly created the list to look this way, but logically this is how it is arranged in memory on line 9. Line 9, this is how the elements are arranged in memory, one after the other. So if we want to print Denmark, it prints Denmark for us. So if we want to say 4, then we get an error because we don't have up to 4 indexes. We actually have up to 4 elements. So we have that list index out of range error, right? Index error. Okay, so that's what I wanted you to get. So let's print Nigeria just to be sure everything works well. That is Bulgaria. Let's print Nigeria. Okay, so Nigeria here is the first index, okay, but the second element. So it prints. Another beautiful thing I want to discuss before I move on. Should I discuss it yet? Yes, manipulation of lists. I don't want to forget it. I don't want it to skip. Now, another beautiful thing about lists is we can use this list to compute some things. I mean, you can write a text and add to that. For example, I'm using my format key to, okay, to format that. All right, so that list now it's a variable, right? So so that list now is a variable. So what we can do now is I can say I am from Nigeria. Okay. I love maybe Sweden, Denmark without any bias. I love all the countries, right? So without bias. Okay, this is just programming. Okay, we have to test and play with things so we understand better, right? So I love, maybe, do I love Sweden? I think I really love all of them, but let me just choose 1, 2, 3 because of my childhood memories. I used to play counter football, and there, the only team I'll choose, national team I'll choose would be Denmark. So let's try that again. So if we print this, so we have, I am from Nigeria. Did I print it? Oh, I should have removed this. Sorry about that. So I am from Nigeria and I love Denmark, right? So that's a beautiful way of creating statements out of lists. Okay, so we can create those statements out of lists and they look really beautiful. So let me just copy that and also paste on this part. Create statements from list. Create statements from lists. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is, you probably might be asking, how can we remove elements? How can we remove elements? Okay. There are two ways of removing elements, just like two ways of inserting elements. Notice that, please get this definition very correctly. Append, let me just write it down. Append at. So the most important thing to note is end of the list. Append adds to the end, adds a element to the end of, this is underlined, end of the list, okay? So there is another function that adds at another position, any position you want, but let's not talk about it just yet, okay? So note that append only adds to the end of the list. For instance, you can't add Sweden before Bulgaria. You can't bring Denmark forward. All of them have to be at the back, like stacked at the back, right? So that's one thing with append. So we have a function that does this, that removes at the end of the list. Okay, so let's just copy and paste and say pop. So we have a function called pop. Okay, so it removes an element at the end of the list. End of the list. Also underline end of. Okay, so that's what a pop does. So let's just see how we can pop out some things. So at present, we can print Denmark. Let's try that again. We can print Denmark countries, and Denmark is 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So if we print this, at present, we can print Denmark. Beautiful. But let me take out that Denmark because it's the end, is the last element here. So if you pop, it automatically removes the last element. Once the last element goes out, this becomes the last element. If you pop again, it removes Sweden. As you keep popping, Nigeria gets removed. If you pop again, Bulgaria gets removed. If you try to pop again, I think there'll be an error, but the list will be empty, okay? So let's try to pop. You don't have to specify which index it is. So just let's pop. So we print the list on line 7, then we pop. So let's pop now. Countries dot pop. That's all you need. Okay. So if we pop that, it's out. Denmark is out. This one is the one that is printed. Okay. Let me put here before pop, after pop, so that you get what I mean. So, okay. Display before. Okay. Before pop. Okay. And we have this one, the same thing. So we are trying to display it after pop. So it will give us an error in the second one. Okay. So we have this, let me bring this up a bit. So we displayed it before pop. Denmark is there before pop, but after pop, the list is out of range because Denmark is out, right? So that's how you get to know, that Denmark has been popped out. All right. Print. Okay, so there's another way you can do this. All right. So now let's try this again. All right. So notice what has happened here. I'll tell you about what I just did. So display before pop. This is line 7, printing out. And on line 8, I actually printed what has happened, this pop. so that it will print the element that has been removed. So it prints Denmark for me. All right. So if I repeat this step, you see that the next element that will be removed will be Sweden. Okay. So that's how you use pop. But in a natural sense, you don't need to use print statement with it, except you want to know the element that has been removed. Okay. So this is a pop, countries.append, countries.pop. So with append, you add to the list. With append, you add to the list. So let me just comment that, add to the end of the list, right? And here, remove from the end of the list. Remove from the end of the list. All right, so that's what pop does. I've taken time to explain that, and I hope you really understand what's worked out there for us. So let me cut this out. I can cut this and this, yeah. And yeah, so this looks good. And I'm also pasting them here. So we don't need this. So add to the end of the list using pop. Okay, pop, append, excuse me. Okay, and here we remove from the end of the list using pop. Okay, so that's easy to do. Those were very, very easy to do. All right. So moving on, we want to be able to add to, we want to be able to add to any position in the list. So to add to a position in the list, we use what we call insert. Okay, and the syntax is just a bit different from what we have already there. All right, so let's see how to do that. Let me remove this line. So let's say we have, let me add more countries: Sudan, South Africa, and maybe 25. You know, we can add different numbers, and maybe 34.8, right? So how can we add to the list between Sudan and South Africa? How can we add to a particular position in the list? So what you consider is, where do you want to add it? So we want to add it at here. Okay, so what we do is we use this easy syntax. So countries dot insert, countries dot insert, and we open our bracket, and we have to, we insert the element Brazil. So nothing will happen because we've not printed anything, but there is no error at all. So, but let's try to print that list. So print and country. And what do we want to print? 3, okay. 2. So if we do that, it prints Brazil for us because it added Brazil here. Okay, so we have actually added to a particular index 0, 1, 2, and we have Brazil there. Okay, and if you want to try, you want to check the length of the list. I mean, you are free to go ahead. The length of the list should be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's Brazil. 5 and 6. So let's just do that. Print length should be 6, right? Countries. So we have expectedly, so Brazil, then 6. So it prints the length for us, showing us that we have actually added. So if you want to check the last element, it should be 5, right? So that will be this number 34.8, not Brazil. So Brazil was not added to the end of the list because we are using an insert function, not an append function. Okay. All right. I hope you are really understanding this. Hope you really understand this. Now, it's a bit tricky. So let me just comment this. How can I insert? We call this at a specified index, a list. Element. At an element at a specified index in a list. Maybe that English, is it correct? All right. Okay. So that is that. So we can copy this as well. And let me copy that and have a comment here also to add for. So we have insert, another function we have studied. So adds an element as a specified index in a list, right? At a specified, is that grammar correct? It doesn't look correct to me. All right, let's just go ahead. So another interesting function we'll discuss today. I hope you're enjoying the class. Yeah, you're free to pause the tutorial, pause the video, practice on your own. Practice makes perfect. I saw one of my students going through tutorial and it was like just listening to something else and just looking at it as if he was watching a funny skit. It was just there, no pen to write, no practical. Okay, so the best way to follow a video religiously is to get a writing material, jot down things that are being said, and try to practicalize everything that is done. Okay, let it work also for you. Oh, it worked on the screen. You've seen it. Pause it and try to make sure it works and you understand better. Okay, you are free to forward, rewind, pause, and enjoy the entire video. Okay, it's just for you. All right. All right, so let's continue. So the other function we'll talk about is called remove function. Remove function. Okay, so it's, in a way, I would say append is the opposite of pop, while insert is the opposite of remove. Okay, insert is the opposite of remove from a list. Okay, so let's see how to use uh, our remove in the list. Okay, so let me just change this to remove, and removes an element at a specified index in a list. Okay, so this one, we are not going to do this. We are not going to do that like that. Okay, so it looks similar, but you have to note what you will do. So you don't need to specify this, the index, it will just remove it for us. Okay, and the thing is, it will be an error because it will try to print this 5. We no longer have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We will no longer have up to 5 indexes again. So it will not print that, to have an error. But however, it will first of all remove Brazil, and let's print, okay, let it remove the Brazil and then let's see what happens. Okay, let's try to print the length before it removes Brazil and the length after it does. Okay, so print len. Oh, what did I remove? Len. And we remove this. Okay, so len country before, right? And we print len after removing here. Okay, so what we expect to have is len country. We'll see a printed statement like this. We'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we'll see 5 because where is the append? I think we removed the append now. So let's append first before we try to remove so that we don't mix things up. So, or just to keep things simple, let's try to remove what's already there. So we can just remove Sudan. Okay, so the first, it will print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements, right? It will print 5 elements for us. And when we remove Sudan, it will print 4 elements before we run into this error. Okay, so let's see 5 and 4 printed out. That should be it. Okay, so expectedly, I've seen it. So we have 5 and we have 4. Okay, we have 5 printed and we have 4 before we have this out of range. So of course, if we move this to 4, out of range, but if you make it 3 because this is index, we will still have our last thing printed without errors. So I hope you really understand how they work. We've used the remove function as well. Remove, I'll add it here. Did we have and pop creates? Where did I add that one? Okay, so maybe I can just add this one here. Remove, okay. Insert, yeah, there was insert before now. Okay, so I don't know, this video has been, it's long, but I hope you are really enjoying the class. And if you have any questions, please do well to leave a comment on the comment section. We'll attend to it as soon as possible. Then there's something else I would like to quickly discuss before we um, we call it a day here today. Let me open another one. So let's have list2 list2.py. Okay, so we have list2.py now. So you can have a list of how can I call this, food? Let me not call food. All right, so list of furniture. Okay, or let me just, I don't know what to call it, continents. All right, so we can create an empty list, right? It mustn't always, something mustn't always be inside of this. Okay, so we can create an empty list and we can begin to add continents.append. So we begin to add values. So let's just say Africa. Okay, so we add that value. But if you print here, you are printing an empty list. If you print continents with square bracket, maybe length. Yeah, let's use length for us to be sure of the length that we have. Okay, and if we print it after here, you would see that. So what we expect to have is 0 and 1 because we have Africa, and not just 1. It should tell us which one it has added. So we can just print again and say continents dots continents, and we need 0, which is the 0 index. So it will print this line, it will print 0, then appends here adds 1, but it's not printing anything here. Then here is printing 1, and so we expect 0, 1, and Africa, right? So let's print it out. So you should get to a point where you understand your code, you understand programming in such a way that um, you're able to tell what will be printed even without printing it. Okay, you have to understand code that way. And all right, so that's what we try to emphasize. We want you to be able to code and be able to complete your task more effectively, especially when it has to do with the realms, in the realms of IT. All right, so I think that's where I'll draw the curtain here. And thank you very much for subscribing to Z6. If you've not yet subscribed, please try and subscribe so you have contents once they are ready. Okay, so you'll be notified on new contents we upload daily. All right, and do well to check our website. It's still in the development phase. We'll be done before, in the next 1 or 2 weeks, we'll be done, right? So do well to check our website, zyzics.com, zyzics.com, okay? And study, practice makes perfect, especially in programming and in IT courses, okay? So make sure you study and practice effectively, develop a passion for this, and also have goals, set goals and achieve them. There's this book I would recommend you to read if you've not yet read it. The book is titled Goals by Brian Tracy. Goals by Brian Tracy. It's a really good book, right? So thank you very much. We love you all, and call your friends, neighbors, people around you, your colleagues to subscribe this channel and enjoy coding. Thank you so much. Bye.